Chapter 13 of Zhang Henshui's Golden Fen family refers to the time when the couple swore off their vows at Goujin Mountain and had a seductive glass of wine and a small banquet to seal their love. Qingqiu got out of the car, opened the door, and walked back to his house. Mrs. Leng asked in the room, "Why did you come back at this time?" Qingqiu said, "The eldest lady of the Jin family took me to the theater." Mrs. Leng asked, "Where to watch the theater?" Qingqiu said, "Yes, her relative's house. Cough, don't mention it. These two houses are really good." Mrs. Leng said with a smile, "Don't talk about people who have never seen the world." Qingqiu said, "It's really nice and well appointed. You have to pass through 3 gatehouses from the outside. The carpets on the ground floor are all the same color," Qingqiu said as he walked. "Come to her mother's house." Mrs. Leng looked down and saw that the pair of crescent satin shoes she was wearing had not yet been taken off, and there were 2 black marks on them. Then he said, "Where have you been? Why did you dirty a pair of shoes?" Qingqiu looked down and thought, and his face turned red. He said, "I don't know how it happened. It was probably because when we were listening to the opera, many people crowded in, and someone stepped on us." Mrs. Leng said, "They are rich people, and they are still crowded when they listen to the opera, right?" Qingqiu said, "It's not that we were sitting around watching the show. It was probably when we were going downstairs that everyone came out like a gust of wind and stepped on my foot." Mrs. Leng said, "You should be careful about what you wear. If you wear something bad, ask me to buy it. This is for you." "That can't be done." Qingqiu didn't argue with her mother anymore and went back to her room to change her shoes. The next day, I suddenly realized that the new handkerchief I had tucked into my body had gone somewhere. It doesn't matter if a handkerchief is lost, but I have embroidered the 2 small characters Qingqiu on the corner of the handkerchief and let others pick it up, but it is inconvenient. Come to think of it, it was tied very tightly to the buttons, so it probably wouldn't get lost. Yanxi must have stolen it. But if he wants to steal the handkerchief from me, he will definitely not steal it in a moment. Why didn't I know anything about him? Qingqiu thought about it and didn't care whether the handkerchief was taken by Yanxi or not, so she privately said to Mother Han, "I went to Jin's house yesterday, and there was a handkerchief left at his house. Go and ask Mr. Jin Qi if he picked it up." "What's a handkerchief worth?" Qingqiu said, "Don't bother, just ask." Han's mother asked Yan seriously because Qingqiu forced her to ask. "West." Yanxi said, "You came just in time. I'm looking for you. I have a note for you to take with you." Mother Han said, "Our lady said she lost a small silk. I wonder if Master Qi picked it up." Yanxi said with a smile, "You tell her, she can't throw it away anyway. This note is about this. If you show it to her, she will know." When Mother Han heard about it, she believed it and took the note back. Qingqiu asked, "Is there any letter on the handkerchief?" Mother Han handed the note to her and said, "Look at this and you will know." When Qingqiu looked at it, he saw it, said, "Don't break your promise to visit the mountains. I'll wait for you in the park at 12 o'clock tomorrow morning, and then go out of the city." Qingqiu read it, crumpled the note into a small ball of paper and said, "It's not about the handkerchief." Mother Han said, "Master Qi said, you can tell just by looking at this. If he didn't mean handkerchief, what else could he say?" Qingqiu paused and said, "They are irrelevant words. He said that when I went to his house yesterday, his reception was not good. Don't do it." I'm surprised. Mother Han doesn't know how to read, so she doesn't know what kind of medicine they sell in her gourd. I won't ask any more questions. Qingqiu waited for her to leave, then opened the crumpled paper ball again and took a look. I thought to myself that it would take a whole day to go to Zishan. I lied to my mother and said I was going to meet my classmates. I'm afraid my mother wouldn't believe it. What if I didn't go? Lost trust in Yanxi again. After hesitating for a long time, I couldn't decide. But as a result of her calculations, her worry about going to the appointment finally defeated her fear of getting into trouble. When I got up early the next morning, I rushed to comb my hair. After combing her hair, she urged Mother Han to cook. Mrs. Leng said, "What are you busy with? Do you want to go out after dinner?" Qingqiu said, "A classmate invited me to her home to practice arithmetic." When Mrs. Leng saw what she said, she didn't ask further questions. After eating for a while, Qingqiu changed her clothes and shoes and was about to leave. Mrs. Leng said, "You kid, you have a few good clothes, but you have to wear them out. Why do you need to wear these good clothes when you go to your classmate's house?" Qingqiu said, "You old man thinks like this. If you have clothes, But later on, the clothes kept getting new and I had to put on new ones. If you want to wear them, just put them on and go. Qingqiu arrived at the park by car. He had seen Yanxi's car parked at the door early. When Qingqiu walked in, he saw Yanxi wandering on the road under the woods in the distance, looking around. As soon as he saw it, he hurriedly came forward to greet him. He smiled and said, "You just came, but I'm very hungry." Qingqiu said, "Why are you so hungry?" Yanxi said, "I haven't eaten, and I'm waiting for you to come and eat." Qingqiu said, "You're so early. Don't tell me. I've already eaten." Yanxi said, "Have you eaten? Can you accompany me to the big restaurant to have something to eat?" Qingqiu said, "I'm here after eating. How can I eat it?" Yanxi said, "I'm a fool." He quickly held back his words. Qingqiu smiled and said, "It doesn't matter if you just say I'm a girl. I see that the girls in your house are all like flowers. I'm afraid I can't compare to them." As he said that, he smiled at Yanxi. Yanxi smiled and said, "Don't worry. Maybe there will be a way to prove your statement is not true in the future. Come on, let's go get something to eat." Qingqiu said, "I really don't want to eat, so I'll just sit with you for a while." The two walked to the terrace and picked a seat. Yanxi asked the waiter to hand over the vegetable label and handed it to Qingqiu to see. Qingqiu said, "I really don't want to eat it." Yanxi said, "If you can't eat it, why don't you just sit here and watch me?" Qingqiu said, "That's fine. I'll eat some jelly." Yanxi said, "No, I just ate it. It's not advisable to eat something cold when you're full." So she asked the waiter to bring another cup of coffee and put it in front of her, while she ate the main course. After the dishes were finished, the waiter brought a plate of jelly. Yanxi just took the teaspoon and pushed the frozen half slice of peach, and felt something hot pressing on the back of her hand. When he looked down, it was Qingqiu who held out the small teaspoon for drinking coffee. She smiled and said, "You didn't want me to eat cold food just now. Why did you eat cold food yourself?" Yanxi smiled and said, "Cold food is not taboo when eating Western food, but if you don't let me eat it, I won't eat it." Qingqiu said, "I'll let you eat it too, and you let me eat it too. Okay?" Yanxi thought for a moment, and said, "Okay, that's it." Then he sent the plate of jelly in front of Qingqiu. Qingqiu said, "Give me yours. What about you?" Yanxi said, "I only want a little. You can give me the rest." Qingqiu used a small teaspoon to cut half of the jelly, lowered his head and said with a smile, "Such a rich young man is so economical that he is reluctant to treat others to another meal." Yanxi said with a smile, "Not only do I save money, but I also take advantage of others." He took out a handkerchief and threw it into the air, said, "Look, isn't this a bargain?" Qingqiu smiled and said, "If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten it. How come you stole the handkerchief from me? How come?" "I don't know at all," Yanxi said. "Isn't it just a handkerchief?" Seeing that there was something in his words, Qingqiu didn't ask further questions. He just used the teaspoon to turn the jelly and put it into his mouth bit by bit. About halfway through the meal, he pushed the plate and said with a smile, "It's too cold." Yanxi saw her pushing the plate away, so she took it and put it in front of her. Qingqiu said with a smile, "You are so greedy, just take it off." Yanxi did not answer, but with a smile, in a while, he ate 2 slices of peach and half a piece of jelly like a gust of wind. I raised my hand and looked at my watch. It was already 1 o'clock. Then he asked Qingqiu, "Are we going to Zhongshan? Or to Badaku? Or to Tangshan?" Qingqiu said, "Who is going to Tangshan? That's a bathing place. That's Zhongshan." Yanxi met at the dinner table, got into a car with Qingqiu, left Zizhemen, and headed straight for Zhongshan. When they arrived at the foot of the mountain, Yanxi helped Qingqiu get out of the car. Yanxi asked, "Should we go to the hotel first, or play on the mountain first?" Qingqiu said, "Since we are here to visit the mountains, of course we should visit the mountains first." Yanxi said, "Aren't you afraid of being tired?" Qingqiu said, "We often run and play in school, so what does this mean?" As he said this, the two of them walked up a hillside along the stone steps. Qingqiu was carrying the small silk umbrella. The further he walked, the more he looked back, as if he couldn't bear it anymore. Standing on a small flat, he took out his handkerchief and wiped his sweat. Yanxi took the umbrella, and said with a smile, "How are you? Are you tired? It's very smooth to get to the Manlu Hotel over there. Let's go over there." So Yanxi stood behind Qingqiu, holding an umbrella to cover her. Stay in the sun and come to the road this way. We walked to the Manna Hotel, picked a chair and sat down against the stone railing on the terrace. The waiter brought tea, and Yanxi poured a cup and put it in front of Qingqiu. Qingqiu said with a smile, "Why are you so polite?" Yanxi said with a smile, "Didn't the ancients say that you should treat each other with respect as a guest?" Qingqiu picked up the teacup and took a sip, but remained silent. Yanxi drank tea and looked southeast. He saw green gauze tents rising at the foot of the mountain, a vast expanse of green. Clumps of green trees on the left and right clustered together in the green field, with the corner of the house slightly exposed, and green smoke rising. Further away, there is a layer of something that looks like smoke, but not smoke, and looks like mist, but not mist, rising from the ground and reaching the sky in the distance. Yanxi said, "You see, when you get here, your horizons are so broad. Wouldn't it be nice to sit in a place like this often?" Qingqiu said with a smile, "It's a pity that people who grow up in a place like this can't appreciate it. People who understand can't come." Yanxi said, "Why can't you come? It can be done by car. You can get there in an hour." Qingqiu said with a smile, "This is what your young masters say. You can't just leave your car for a trip to the mountains, right?" Yanxi said, "I'm not talking about others, I'm talking about you." Qingqiu said, "You mean me? Do I have a car?" Yanxi said, "Of course you will." Seeing him say this, Qingqiu grabbed a handful of melon seeds from the plate, put them in front of him, picked them up one by one, and chewed them slowly with his 4 white front teeth, feeling very strong in his heart. The ground held back a laugh. Yanxi asked again, "Do you think what I said makes sense?" Qingqiu smiled, nodded, and said, "It makes sense. If I didn't have some magic, I could conjure a car. Just be a female robber and grab one." Yanxi said, "No need. You will naturally have it." "Do you think what I said is right?" Qingqiu said with a smile, "You may be right, or you may not be right. I don't know." Yanxi said, "Let's be honest. I have a car, which means you have a car." Qingqiu just kept silent. Yanxi seemed to have reached an extreme point after saying this, and she couldn't think of how to continue. So the two of them sat in relative silence and drank tea for a while. Yanxi pointed to a flat area on the right and said, "The road over there is easy to walk. Let's go for a walk there." Qingqiu said, "We just sat there for a while, and we have to walk again." Yanxi said, "There is a green line there. The water in the stream is very clear. Let's go see the fish." Yanxi stood up. Although Qingqiu didn't really want to go, she followed him unknowingly. Walking to the stream, there was a shade of trees, reflecting the green of the spring water. The southeast wind blew through the valley, very cool. There was a white rock next to the stream. Qingqiu leaned over and sat on the rock, looking at the fish in the stream. Yanxi sat on a piece of green grass under the rock, hugged his knees with both hands, staring at the water in the stream in a daze. Qingqiu's long skirt was blown by the wind, and it often blew on his face, but he didn't know it. After a long while, Yanxi said, "Do you understand why I invited you to Zhongshan today?" Qingqiu still looked at the water, just shook his head and said nothing. Yanxi said, "You must understand. I told you half of it in the Wang family garden the day before yesterday." As he said that, he suddenly stood up, holding Qingqiu's hand with one hand, and took out a gold ring from his bag with the other hand. Qingqiu looked back and stood up too. He didn't take back the hand that was held, but stretched out his other hand and held Yanxi's hand, holding the ring. Seeing her like this, Yanxi wanted to refuse, which was really unexpected. Qingqiu didn't wait for him to speak, and said first, "Your intention was not today, not the day before yesterday. I knew it a long time ago. But I thought about it carefully. What family are you from? What family am I from? Can I marry someone so high up?" Yanxi said, "I really didn't expect you to say this. Do you think I was fake?" Qingqiu said, "Of course you are sincere." Yanxi said, "Since I am sincere, how can we tell the difference between family background?" Qingqiu said, "Since you are so sincere to me, of course you don't have any prejudice against family background. But your old man, old lady, and your brother and sister, don't many people have prejudice against family background?" After Qingqiu finished speaking, he let go of his hand and sat on the stone, picked up the small sand on the stone, slowly threw it into the water, and just stared at the water in a daze. Yanxi said, "You are worrying too much. Marriage is our business. What does it have to do with them? As long as you love me and I love you, the engagement will be established." Besides, in our family, marriage is extremely free for everyone, regardless of whether it is a man or a woman, and they will never interfere in my affairs. Qingqiu said, let me ask you a question. Is there anyone in your house who marries a poor family? Yanxi said, although there is no one forbids anyone from marrying a poor family. Since marriage is free, I can marry whoever I want, and my family can't ask. Besides, your family is just a little less wealthy, and you are still a respectable family. Why can't I propose to you? Qingqiu said, you say what you said is very reasonable. I cannot refute you. But I dare not say that everyone in the mansion agrees with it. Yanxi said, didn't I say it? Marriage is free. They can't ask about it. As long as you don't despise me, it's settled. Not to mention that they can't help but agree, even if they are against it. Can they still break our engagement? If you refuse my request, please say so clearly. Otherwise, for the sake of the relationship between the two families, our pure love will be hindered, which would be a loss for the greater good. Moreover, as long as the union of love is pure, even if there is pressure to interfere, we must risk our lives to resist, not to mention that there is no obstacle now. Qingqiu sat there still, staring at the water in a daze, silent. Yanxi held her hand again and said, Qingqiu, are you really going to refuse my request? Yes, my family has some dirty money, and you think I am money-minded. My father and brother are both officials, and you think my family is bureaucratic and not as clean as yours, right? Qingqiu said, I didn't expect you to say such things. You don't understand my thoughts at all. Yanxi said, you said you were afraid that my family would object. I have already said it, and there is no problem. Now, I suspect that you think my family is not good, and you say it is not. Well, there are no obstacles on both sides. Why haven't you expressed yourself yet? Qingqiu sat on the stone, looking at the water, still silent, but there was a slight smile on her face. Yanxi held her hand tightly and said, tell me, do you have any objections? Qingqiu smiled and turned her face away, saying, I have said everything I wanted to say. There is nothing more to say. Yanxi said, you have to say something, then I will feel at ease. Qingqiu said, what do you want me to say? Yanxi smiled and said, just say whatever you think you should say. The harder Yanxi pressed, the more Qingqiu couldn't help laughing, and she simply raised one arm to hide her face under her sleeve and laughed. Yanxi pushed her arm down with all her strength and said, I must make you say something. How about this, so that I don't have to be embarrassed to say it directly, and you don't have to answer directly. I will say something in English. If you don't agree to me, I will stand here with you until dark, from dark to dawn. Qingqiu shook her head and said with a smile, I don't understand English. Yanxi said, don't be polite. Don't you really don't understand? I'll just say it directly. Then he took out the ring with one hand, showed it to Qingqiu, and asked, Qingqiu, are you willing to? Qingqiu didn't let him finish, and quickly covered Yanxi's mouth with a handkerchief, and said with a smile, don't say any more, it's unpleasant to hear. Yanxi said, this is difficult. When I speak English, you say you don't understand, and when I speak Chinese, you think it's unpleasant to hear. Is it okay to be so confused like this? Then, there is no reason to wear this ring. No matter what, I always want you to say one sentence. Qingqiu said, you are really too troublesome. Just say one sentence in English. Yanxi said, I said, if you don't agree, I can't take it back. Qingqiu said, what if I don't agree? Yanxi said, it's easy to agree. You just need to say one word, a yes. Do you want to say it? Qingqiu smiled and said, just say yes? That's fine, right? Yanxi said, don't play dumb. Don't make it difficult for me. I've said it. You have to agree. Qingqiu smiled and said, do you really just say yes? That's okay. Yanxi said, don't say 2 or 3 words, just say one. Qingqiu smiled and said, just don't say 2 or 3 words, just say one. Yanxi then raised Qingqiu's hand a little, and he also slightly extended his ring finger, meaning that she should wear the ring. Yanxi said, I love you. Qingqiu had already laughed. How could she say anything? Yanxi said, what's wrong? Don't you agree to my request? Qingqiu was forced to nod. Yanxi said, you nodded at an inappropriate time. It seems that you don't agree to my request. Qingqiu said, don't bother me. I agreed to your English sentence. Yanxi said. At this time, the group of tourists was getting closer and closer. Qingqiu walked back slowly in front of the crowd. Yanxi had no choice but to go all the way to the hotel. Qingqiu sat down, lowered her head to look at the ring, and then said to Yanxi, "I have something to say, don't be suspicious. I am not sure whether my mother agrees or not, so I have to talk to her slowly. Before I explain it to her, I can't wear this ring for the time being." Yanxi said, "Of course. But I think my aunt's opinion is not bad for me, and she will definitely not disapprove." Qingqiu said, "I think so too. I am not worried about her not disapproving. What I am most worried about is your side. You have several elders above you, and it's a big family. When you go back and tell them about it, if they know that it's someone like me, there will be a big uproar in public opinion, and even you will probably be embarrassed." Yanxi said, "You are always worried about this. I will say it categorically, let them disapprove of this marriage, and I will negotiate with my mother privately and ask them to give us tens of thousands of dollars to study abroad. When we graduate and come back, we can support the family ourselves. At that time, they will definitely not be able to do anything to us." Qingqiu said, "According to what you said, it is easy to solve. But it is easier said than done." Yanxi said, "What's so difficult about it? If I say I want to study abroad, how can my family not give me money? As long as they give us money, we can leave at any time." Qingqiu said, "What you said makes sense. But can you have this determination in the future?" Yanxi said, "Of course I can do it. If I can say it, I can do it. Don't worry. Don't doubt it. If I say something that I can't fulfill, I will be despised by the society and will never meet the society with the three names of Jin Yanxi." Qingqiu smiled and said, "Why are you in a hurry?" Yanxi said, "If you don't believe me, if I don't swear, what can I do?" Qingqiu smiled and said, "You want to do this yourself, not me forcing you." Yanxi said, "This is my sincere expression. You can't rest assured unless you do this." Qingqiu said, "Don't mention it, talk about something else." Yanxi said, "I am very happy in my heart, as if I have got something lovely, but I can't say it. Is it the same for you?" Qingqiu pursed her lips and smiled. Yanxi asked, "What shall we eat?" Qingqiu said, "Didn't you eat before leaving the city? Why do you want to eat again?" Yanxi smiled and said, "Let's have a drink to celebrate." Qingqiu said, "I can't eat anything." Yanxi said, "It's boring to sit here. Let's go up the hillside and have some fun. When we get hungry, we can come back and have a drink." Qingqiu said, "I can't walk." Yanxi said, "The road is very flat and not far." Qingqiu smiled and said, "I'm wearing these white satin shoes, and when I turn around, only the soles are left." Yanxi said, "My shoes are broken. What kind of shoes do you want? I'll call the shoe store. When you go up, you can ask them to get home." Answer, "You are always right." Yanxi said, "It's not what I said, it's right. It's because you are asking about it sincerely. So I said that you don't have any trouble walking around the mountain. We should be hungry. Should we eat something?" Qingqiu said, "What do you always want me to eat?" Yanxi said, "Am I not saying it?" Qingqiu stroked the cup and said, "How can I drink this big cup of wine?" Yanxi smiled and said, "Drink it first, and we'll talk when you can't drink it." After saying that, he raised the glass cup to Qingqiu. Qingqiu had no choice but to raise the cup, but he only dipped his lips against the rim of the glass and put the cup down. Yanxi said, "No matter what, you have to really drink a little. This kind of drinking is like kissing the glass. I can't admit it." Qingqiu smiled at Yanxi and said, "What did you say?" Yanxi smiled and said, "I didn't say anything, but there is no malice in offering tea and wine. You can't blame me, right?" After saying that, he raised the cup again. Qingqiu saw that he raised the cup and didn't put it down, so he had to really drink a sip. Yanxi said, "Your cup is too much. I only have a small half cup left. You give it to me." He took most of Qingqiu's cup of wine and poured it into his own cup, leaving an empty cup, and then divided a small half of the wine in his cup and poured it into that. Qingqiu said with a smile, "Why? Are you in a daze?" Yanxi said, "There is too much wine. I am afraid you can't drink it. I will give you some. Isn't it good?" Then he handed her the wine glass and said, "Drink it." Qingqiu held the glass, but she refused to drink it. She just blushed and smiled. Yanxi said, "Why don't you drink it?" Qingqiu said, "You are not allowed to do something in your heart?" Yanxi also smiled. "It's better that you know. You have to drink it." Qingqiu said, "You are civilized in everything. Why are you so stubborn about this?" Yanxi said, I am like this. I am civilized when it is interesting to be civilized. I am stubborn when it is interesting. Qingqiu laughed when he saw that he was so naughty. That day, the unmarried couple had a great time in Zhangshan. They went into the city when the sun set. Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.